Welcome to AminAcademy.com. In History of Muslim World, let us discuss about history of Prophet Muhammad in Medina. The first Islamic state, also known as State of Medina, was the first Islamic state established by Prophet Muhammad in Medina in 622 CE under the Constitution of Medina. It represent it represented the political unity of the Muslim Ummah, that is a nation. After Muhammad's death, his campaign, known as Rightly Guided Caliphates, Rashidun founded the Rashidun Caliphate in 632 to 661, which began a massive expansion and motivated subsequent Islamic states such as Umayyad Caliphate and Abbasid Caliphate. Now, we'll discuss about Muhammad's life in Medina. The Prophet Muhammad's history in Medina includes his migration to the city, the establishment of Muslim community and building of a theocratic state. Migration to Medina in 622, Muhammad fled Mecca to Medina to escape persecution by the Quraysh. This migration is known as the Hijrah or flight and marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar. Establishment of Muslim community. In Medina, Muhammad built a community of followers of Islam. He was given a position of political power and established a theocratic state. Building a theocratic state, Muhammad has administered a rapidly growing empire in Medina, returned to Mecca. In 629, Muhammad returned to Mecca as a conqueror. The burial in Medina, Muhammad is entombed in Medina and pilgrimage is made to his tomb in the city of Chief Mosque. Medina, located in the Hijaz region of western Saudi Arabia, is the second holiest city in Islam. First happening, the Jews and hypocrites. The first Qibla was the Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. In the first year of his reign at Yathrib, the Prophet made a solemn treaty with the Jewish tribes which secured to them equal rights of citizenship and full religious liberty in the return of their support of the new state. But their idea of a prophet was one who would give them dominant, not one who made the Jews who followed him brothers of every Arab who might happen to believe as they did. When they found that they could not use the prophet for their own ends, they tried to shake his faith in his mission and to seduce his followers, behavior in which they were encouraged secretly by some professing Muslims who considered they had reason to resent the Prophet's coming, since it robbed them of their local influence. In the Medina's surahs, where is frequent mention of these Jews and hypocrites in Quran. About the Qibla. Till then, the Qibla, the place towards which the Muslims turned their face in prayer, had been Jerusalem. The Jews imagined that the choice implied by a leaning towards Judaism and that the Prophet stood in need of their instruction. He received command to change the Qibla from Jerusalem to the Kaaba at Mecca. The whole first part of Juz 2 in Quran, it's revealed. The first expedition. The Prophet's first concern as ruler was to establish public worship and lay down the constitution of the state. But he did not forget that Quraysh had sworn to make an end of his religion, nor that he had received command to fight against them till they ceased from the persecution. After he had been 12 months in Yathrib, several small expeditions went out, led either by a prophet himself or by other of fugitives from Mecca for the purpose of reconquering and dissuading other tribes from siding with Quraysh. These are generally represented as warlike but considered their weakness and the fact that they did not result in fighting. They can hardly have been that thought, though it is certain that they went out ready to resist attack. It is noteworthy that is known expeditions only fugitives from Mecca were employed, never natives of Yathrib. The reason being, if we accept Ibn Qudam's theory, and there is no other explanations, that the command to wage war had been revealed to the Prophet of Mecca after the Yathrib men had sworn their oath of allegiance at Al-Aqaba, and in their absence, their oath foresee fighting in mere defense, not fighting in the field. Blood was shed and booty taken in only one of those early expeditions, and then it was against the Prophet's order. The Prophet of those expeditions may have been to accustom the Mecca Muslims to going out in a warlike trim. For 13 years, they had been strict pacifists, and it is clear from several passages of Quran that many of them, including it may be the Prophet himself, hasted the idea of fighting even in self-defense and had to be inured to it. Now, let us come to Battle of Badr. The site of the campaign of Badr, the enclosed square is the opening of the well, the campaigning Badr. In the second year of Hijrah, the Meccan merchants' caravan was returning from Syria as usual by a road which passed not far from Yathrib. As its leader Abu Sufyan approached the territory of Yathrib, he heard the Prophet's design to capture the caravan. At once he sent a camel rider on to Mecca, who arrived in a worn-out state and shouted frantically from the valley of Quraysh to hasten to the rescue unless they wished to lose both wealth and honor. A force 1,000 strong was soon in its way to Yathrib, less it would seem, with the hope of saving the caravan than with the idea of punishing the raiders, since the Prophet might have taken the caravan before the relief force started from Mecca. Did the Prophet ever intend to raid the caravan? No. In Ibn Hisham, in the account of the Tabuk expedition, it is stated that the Prophet on the one occasion did not hide his real objectives. The caravan was the pretext in the campaign of Badr. The real objective was the Meccan army. He had received command to fight his persecutors and promise of victory. He was prepared to venture against any odds, as was well seen at Badr. But the Muslims, ill-equipped of war, would have despaired if they had known from the first that they were to face a well-armed force 3 times their number. The victory of Badr gave the Prophet new prestige among the Arab tribes. The army of Quraysh had advanced to more than halfway to Yathrib before the Prophet set out. All three parties, the army of Quraysh, the Muslim army, and the caravan, were heading for the water of Badr. Abu Sufyan, the leader of the caravan, heard from one of his scouts that the Muslims were near the water. and turned back to the coast plain, and the Muslims met the army of Quraysh by the water of Badr. Before the battle, the Prophet was prepared still further to increase the odds against him. He gave leave to all the Ansar, native of Yathrib, to return to their homes unreproached, since their oath did not include the duty of fighting in the field. But the Ansar were only hurt by the suggestion that they could possibly desert him at a time of danger. The battle went at first against the Muslims but ended in a signal victory for them. The victory of Badr gave the Prophet's new prestige among the Arab tribes, but thenceforth there was the fear of blood between Quraysh and Islamic State in addition to the old religious hatred. Those passages of Quran which refer to the Battle of Badr give warning to much greater struggle yet to come. In fact, in the following year, an army of 3,000 came from Mecca to destroy Yathrib. The Prophet's first idea was merely to defend the city, the plan of which Abdullah ibn Ubay, the leader of the hypocrites, strongly approved. But the men who had fought at Badr and believed that God would help them against any odds thought it a shame that they should linger behind walls. Next, about Battle of Uhud. The Prophet, approving of their faith and zeal, gave way to them and set out with an army of 1,000 men towards Mount Uhud, where the enemy were encamped. Abdullah ibn Ubay was much offended by the change of plan. He thought it unlikely that a prophet really meant to give battle in conditions so adverse to the Muslims and was unwilling to take part in a mere demonstration designed to flatter the fanatical extremists. So they withdrew with his men a fourth of the army. Despite the heavy odds, the Battle of Mount Uhud would have been an even greater victory than that at Badr for the Muslims, but for the disobedience of a band of 50 archers, whom the Prophet set to guard a pass against the enemy cavalry. Seeing their comrades victorious, these men left their post, fearing to lose their share of the spoil. The cavalry of Quraysh rode through the gap and fell on the exultant Muslims. The Prophet himself was wounded, and the cry arose that he was slain, till someone recognized him and shouted that he was still living, a shout to which the Muslims rallied. Gathering round the Prophet, they retreated, leaving many dead on the hillside. On the following day, the Prophet again sallied forth with what remained of the army, that Quraysh might hear that he was in the field, and so might perhaps be deterred from attacking the city. The stratagem succeeded thanks to the behavior of friendly Bedouin who met the Muslims and conversed with them, and afterwards met the army of Quraysh. Questioned by Abu Sufyan, he said that Muhammad was in the field, stronger than ever, and thirsting for revenge for yesterday's affair. On that information, Abu Sufyan decided to return to Mecca, massacre of Muslims. The revenge, the rivers which they had suffered on Mount Uhud lowered the prestige of the Muslims with the Arab tribes and also with the Jews of Yathrib. Tribes which had inclined towards the Muslims now inclined towards Quraysh. The Prophet's followers were attacked and murdered when they went abroad in the little campaign. Hubayb, one of his envoys, was captured by a desert tribe and sold to Quraysh, who tortured him to death in Mecca publicly. Explosion of Bani Nadir. And the Jews, despite their treaty, now hardly concealed their hostility. They even went so far in flattery of Quraysh as to declare the religion of the pagan Arabs superior to Islam. The Prophet was obliged to take punitive action against some of them. The tribe of Bani Nadir were besieged in their strong towers, subdued, and forced to emigrate. The hypocrites had sympathized with Jews and secretly egged them on. The War of the Trench. The War of the Muslim Dug was the first of its kind in Arab warfare. We'll continue this discussion in next video. So far we discussed about some part of life of Muhammad in Medina. We have done. Please subscribe our YouTube channel.